Good afternoon, and welcome to this agenda review meeting of the Nacogdoches Independent School District Board of Trustees. Let a record show that a quorum of board members is present and that notice of this meeting has been legally posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Board member James Montoya is out of state and will not be joining us for today's meeting. The meeting can be viewed through Zoom, and instructions on how to join the meeting are included on the meeting notice and available on our website, www.nacisd.org. I would like to remind everyone that all items on the agenda today are discussion only. No action will be taken at this meeting. Please join us in turning off your cell phones or turning them to silent mode. The first item on our agenda today is public comment. We did not receive any requests to address the board. If anyone would like to make public comment at a future board meeting, please read the directions outlined in the meeting notice for registering to speak. That will take us to item 3 of the agenda review on the consent agenda. First item is board meeting minutes. I'll just open it up to see if any of the board members had any corrections, comments, or concerns about the minutes. Hearing none, we'll move to item B, business office reports. Mrs. Barbrick.
Good afternoon, President Fitch, board members, Dr. Trujillo. If you'll please excuse me, but my computer is still booting up, so I'm going to be looking across right over here. I'd like to begin with the budget amendments. That is beginning on page 20. And the first budget amendment is to pull funds from fund balance for a vehicle ordered prior to COVID and still not delivered for technology. This was delayed because of COVID, and then they opened back up, but now they have informed us that they are not making that vehicle anymore. So we are having to reach out again. Budget Amendment B is to pull funds from fund balance for vehicle purchases that were delayed in 2021 for transportation, plant services, warehouse, and technology. These were vehicles that we delayed this past year to go out to RFP. Item number C is pull funds from fund balance for the police vehicle ordered in 2021, but it has not been delivered yet. So that is for the police department. Any questions on budget amendments? All right, so next I would like to go to donations. And we have a donation of $1,000 for student uniforms from the Nacogdoches Alumni Chapter Delta Sigma. And to Fredonia, a donation of $150 for the school staff from the Nacogdoches Rotary Club. Any questions there? All right, moving on to investments. Again, nothing notable there. Earnings are still dismal. Still hopeful that they'll eventually go up. Any questions on investments? All right, and then I'd like to entertain any other questions you might have on my reports.
Thank you, Ms. Barbrick.
You're welcome.
Hearing no additional questions, we'll move to item C, purchases over $25,000. The first item is Solution Tree. Dr. Hill.
Good afternoon, President Fitch, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Trujillo. The first item is Solution Tree. It's a contract for a total of $283,036.72 from our ESSER 3 funds. This is for 3 pilot campuses of BQJ, Carpenter, as well as McMichael to participate in both professional learning sessions as well as coaching sessions for what they would consider to be like their guiding coalition, which is also like their leadership teams. on the campus. This particular contract will include 17 days of face-to-face professional development and coaching sessions on RTI, which is response to intervention at work, 5 days of face-to-face concentrating on PLC specifically for Carpenter, and then 16 interactive web conferencing sessions that will focus on response to intervention. We feel as though ESSER 3 funds would be a good outlet for these particular resources, simply because it aligns with our COVID slide and making sure that we are intervening appropriately, accurately, purposefully, intentionally with all of our students who may be exhibiting learning deficiencies due to COVID.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We're making a lot of eye contact. I know you knew I was coming. We've used them in the past. Can you tell me on what campuses and in what capacity we've used Solution Tree in the past?
So we have used a consultant that's been working with Solution Tree, and her name is Paula Rogers.
Just the
And
consultant?
so, yes, ma'am,
Okay.
as a consultant. And so, but two, and it's kind of twofold. So we have her
Right,
that has been
right.
worked just across the district,
Mhm.
primarily specifically elementary as well as McMichael campuses, focusing on RTI, focusing on PLC. We've also used some Solution Tree consultants a couple of years ago for our back to school conference for, I think we used 4 different consultants, Paula Rogers being one of them, Brian Butler, Regina, and I'm at a loss right now. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to answer that question, but we've had 4 keynote speakers. Last year, we did have a smaller administrative retreat prior to the school year beginning, where we used Ken Williams and another gentleman. And I'm sorry, I'll think about it as
No,
soon as
that's
we move
okay. I mean,
on.
that's enough for me to understand that we've not used them like this before. We've just been kind of availing ourselves of their particular consultants. and
Correct,
things.
correct. This would be a very clear-cut focused area. That's why I kind of call them pilots.
Okay. Mhm.
The campuses who are a part of this have requested these services. And so it's very intensive. And we're really looking forward to it. Our idea of consultants is they increase our own capacity so that they can eventually be worked out of working with us, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we sit alongside them so that we're here to sustain what the campuses are learning and to support them throughout the year.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to expand on that just a little bit. So, because my question, and I think you kind of hit on it just a little bit, is I hear you saying it's a pilot program. We want to try this out and see what the results are. I think that's good. Why these 3 campuses? What was the process of selecting Carpenter, BQJ, and McMichael?
So I won't necessarily speak for Carpenter because we've had a brand new administration come in, but Ms. Nacogdoches, who is now our principal, has been exposed to some of the trainings that we've had in the past and coaching with Paula Rogers, whether it be PLC and RTI. From a McMichael standpoint, he too has gone to several PLC conferences outside of Nacogdoches. And so, and just through conversations requested it. And then BQJ, same thing.
Okay.
They've been to some PLC institutes, but then they've also worked with Paula Rogers over the past couple of years and just wanted to do a deeper dive into our learning.
Okay. And Paula Rogers, she worked, well, and I know the consultant that's working with or has been working with Carpenter, I would assume would be the same that was working with Fredonia, or not?
Yeah, do you mean in the past year, Ms. Fitch?
Well, not
asked-
necessarily the past few years.
Yes,
Let's go a
ma'am.
little more encompassing.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So
Okay. And what is your timeline or process of evaluating the pilot? I assume when you say we're going to pilot this, this means we're looking at this to potentially roll out district-wide.
potentially, and it could be that, the next year, going into the 22-23 school year, only 2 more campuses say, oh, I really like what I'm seeing on these
Okay.
other campuses. We want to give it a go. And then we work with them throughout the year to get them on board for the subsequent year.
Okay. So my question there is kind of how do you see, or what is the plan for evaluating the success of this program to say, yes, this is getting the results that we want, versus what's that plan and timeline?
So we begin in September with our first 2 face-to-face sessions with all 3 campuses. And so it will be back-to-back with 2 of the coaches and then the 3 campuses. So it will be anecdotal notes and
Mhm.
observation, looking at their intervention periods. It's of course student data, because and all else bring data, because data doesn't lie.
Yes.
So we're going to go back to our student achievement, looking at where students were at the beginning of the year, where they are at the middle of the year, and then where they are at the end of the year. And then of course, STAR will be our ultimate, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But then it's also from an anecdotal standpoint of just listening to their conversations and hearing how they're growing as individuals in putting systems in place that are very proactive and not reactive to student
Yes.
learning. Does that make sense?
It does.
Because so often as educators, we get tied up in a cycle of being more reactive to student data and not anticipating it. And so, with all the new legislation of HB 4545 and TEA coming on board and calling them priority standards, we were having a meeting this morning that Dr. Trujillo happened to be a part of, where we're really ahead of the game, because here in Nacogdoches, we've determined our essential standards a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so we're very pleased with what we're hearing from the state. It's something that we're already doing. Has it 100% filtrated the system yet? Not quite yet, but we're getting there, and we've made such great strides. So to answer your question very specifically, I think it's going to be formatively throughout the year.
Okay.
After each of the learning sessions, those will take place in September, November, and I believe the last one is in February. But then as I visit with campus principals as well as their leadership teams, just hearing from them what they're getting, what they're not getting. What I like specifically about this is it's very customizable, not only in the coaching sessions that'll be one-on-one with the campus principal and the solution tree coach, but then also in the interactive web or Zoom meetings.
Okay, great.
So it's ongoing, but then I think the
Good.
finality will be as we do periodic assessments throughout the year,
Mhm.
and then at the end of the year start.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate there's kind of a plan in place to do that. I think one of my requests would be is so often over the last few years, we'll see stuff like this be brought to us for approval, but we'll never really hear the wrap up on the other side.
Okay.
Unless it's, oh, we really like this and we want to renew this. Of course, then it comes back to the board for usually approval on that expenditure. But I would love, as we look at all of these pilot programs that we're kind of looking at and doing, is to kind of hear that wrap up and say, this is what we really liked, this is what we didn't really like, and turns out it wasn't really a good fit for us because of this, so we're looking at something different. But I know I personally, I don't know how y'all would feel about that, but I'd love to kind of hear that feedback.
I think we need it.
Yeah.
I would, because I was actually going to ask about that, because we've heard pilot programs, and I think either Paula Rogers or Claire Kuntz, one of them did one at, I think, Regay. In my tenure here on the board, we did pilot projects, and I never really got feedback. So I appreciate that, and I think that makes it easier for us to kind of look going forward as to did we or did we not like it or
Yeah,
whatever.
I think that gives us an assurance as a board that we know not everything's going to be successful. So I don't want there to be that pressure that we can't bring this back because it wasn't successful. I think we would love to know what worked and didn't work,
Wonderful.
if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that okay for us to do at the end of the year?
Yes.
Oh,
Maybe even after
like a-
STAR?
Like a summative thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thing, and I shouldn't use that word.
And
Also,
President Finch, I may add, if you
you may.
will, is a big component to this is since we're using ESSER funds, it's limited amount of resources.
Mhm.
So what we want to do is also invest in our people, invest in their trainers of trainers. And I don't want to get the cart before the horse because you're going to hear some of this. And I've sat in and watched some of these other trainings that you're fixing to hear about that we've had. And we've had teachers in the room, we've had instructional coaches in the room. So it's going to come to a point that when we're spending a significant amount of resources here, and when we grow and expand and add 2 more campuses or more campuses, we have limited resources to put out there. So how can we do this with the greatest fidelity? And that is to invest in the folks that we have within the network, which includes our coaches, includes our teachers, and includes teaching and learning. Some of these are interdepartmental, where you have multiple departments working with each other. So one of the great investments that you'll see with this as well is what is the capacity of Nacogdoches, our administration, when we go out there, provide the services for our folks. So even though we're looking at the data on that side of it, we're also looking at the worth and value that we're investing in our folks to
Absolutely.
go in there and be able to be the trainer of trainers, because money doesn't grow on trees. So we've got to have to
Absolutely.
figure out how we can do this also by growing the capacity within. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting because I almost asked that question going down that road because they say never assume, but my assumption would be if this was a successful program that we wanted to broaden out, then we've got resources on these campuses
Yes.
yeah,
from
absolutely.
with these staff that can help pass that knowledge along and mentor.
Absolutely.
So,
So, and I
Something
just-
I was thinking about in this area is if we had feedback, and that can be in the people that from our district writes a one paragraph evaluation. This is what I learned, or this is what was good, this is what was bad. The other thing is that we can have an objective evaluation, one sheet with check boxes, and then a thing at the bottom, what's good, what's bad. So we get a feedback from the people who actually take this course for you and for us, and maybe for the principals too.
absolutely.
I think the feedback on this is we can figure out if it's because this is what we think now. Now, what do you think a year later?
Yes.
And that we can go back to them and we can track it better, I
That's a
think, like that.
Very good point.
And I just want to clarify that this is going to be training, coaching with campus principals and leadership. This is not with classroom teachers because we're expecting a trickle down, right?
It is a trickle down, but I'm going to be honest with you and speak very freely. We call it a guiding coalition, which could be made up of some classroom teachers. They may be interventionists. So I don't want to say
Instructional
it's not
coaches or
going, yes,
something
ma'am.
like that,
It's
yeah.
not going to include,
Mhm.
I'm going to leave that up to the principals on who
Sure.
they choose to
Mhm.
be a part of this, the face-to-face PD as well as the coaching
Yeah,
sessions.
well, that makes perfect sense. But because of that, and because we certainly don't want to take more time away from classroom teachers.
Yes, ma'am.
When we do evaluate, I would like to hear from the classroom teachers. Okay, I knew you're way ahead of me.
Oh, no, ma'am. No, I was going to say, yes, ma'am. That's exactly what I had written
Yeah,
down is that
because
it's,
that way we can see the gaps where it's not coming down. I know when we paid for a lot of training for Canvas, and people, just a few from each campus got the training, and it wasn't good enough because it never got to the teachers. They felt like they were on their own and they were just groping around, looking around. And so that way they can figure out where we need to be a little stronger. Okay, I
so
appreciate it. I know
impact
you're-
on the classroom. Is that what I'm hearing you? Okay.
Right. Any other thoughts before we move on? All right. That'll take us to item C2, accelerate learning. Dr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a program, even though it says Accelerate Learning, that's the parent company of an instructional resource called STEM Scopes. So in the past, we've used it for various grade levels for math and science. So this year, we're wanting to expand that to all elementary grades of math and science, as well as science at the middle school levels and then science at the high school level. So we just want to increase our amount of usage.
Okay, and so we feel like what we've had so far has been successful, or how have we evaluated it? How have we come to that conclusion? That it really has. I know it's like we have to ignore scores, but there's gotta be some way in which we have been able to determine, okay, we see some success here, and we think it's value enough that we should go further.
So for one thing, both qualitative as well as quantitative, right? Because we always look at scores.
Mhm.
And so those essential standards that we've delineated, we test those 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end. Even
Mhm.
though in the scope and sequence, they may not be until the end of we still look at that data
Sure.
as far as how kids have grown. So that's our qualitative data. And then, of course, we look at STAR. While we know those results were not where we wanted them to be, we look to see if we made some gains. How were they as compared to our 2019 scores, which I know you guys will see some of that data next month. I believe that's on our calendar to share with you all. And then we also visit with teachers. I personally sit in on collaborative planning meetings and or PLCs when they get to mathematics. And so, and I've sat in on some of the PD that STEM Scopes has done for us. So I hear, now granted, it's not across the board. So when I say this, it's a small group, just depends on which ones that I can go to, but I've not heard really anything negative about it. It's pretty easy to use. If anything, they probably have too much stuff for us to get to, which is always nice because one thing we don't have a lot of is time during the instructional day. And so if this is a resource that teachers can use to call through the pieces that they want to use, if that makes sense,
Sure.
rather than going to multiple other resources, we would like for them to kind of concentrate their time. And it's easier. Is it making sense? So
Yeah,
instead of
it
going
is.
to like
It's
maybe,
fitting the need as a resource that we truly don't have any other place, and the teachers want it.
we
Okay.
don't, it would be in multiple places. So whether they went to a Pinterest or a teacher, of Teachers Pay Teachers or their textbook
right, which-
or Mentoring Minds.
Mhm,
So,
yeah, which we-
but we also know like Mentoring Minds is something that we have purchased a whole set.
Yeah,
You probably won't see that come through this year unless there's a select campus that say, no, we really want that in addition to.
mhm,
And that may be a case where one particular campus has used a different instructional resource
mhm.
as supplemental, whereas this would be their main quote unquote curriculum that they would use
This
for
would
math
be-
and science.
Okay,
So I believe what I'm hearing you say is that we've used this in select places.
Mhm.
You didn't use the word pilot, but we're not using it across the board and we're wanting to expand the usage of it.
We are, that is exactly correct. Thank
So
you.
that would tell me that we've had some success with it.
Mhm.
Can you show us in data some of that, maybe before Thursday, just to kind of say, this is an example of the success that we've had with STEM scopes versus an area that's not, that's not using that platform right now
or even previously.
or
before we
previously.
had it.
Yeah.
That I like
That-
better if that's okay with you all, rather because I don't want to get into an apple and oranges.
Mhm.
So I would much rather, and I'm going to say like a BQJ, look at their maybe 2019
Mhm.
to this year.
Okay.
So.
Yeah,
I
I'd
think that
rather,
would
I'd
help
rather see
us.
before and then after. What effect did it have?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And understand, we as board members are kind of been, the state has really been encouraging and training us, look at the data, what is successful, what's not successful. So I think seeing that example of this is a program that we've had some success with. And so here's the data that shows that success and we want to expand and grow on that would help us.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Under the STEM scopes, it's the math, it's the science PD quote. On the very top of that page, it lists the schools that are going to use it and how long it lasts. That should be, I think it's the last tab on that. Did you find it yet?
I've got a printed version, so bear with me just a moment. Let me put it up in board book.
Yeah, it's the last tab, Accelerate Learning in ISD, K through HS Science.
Yes, sir.
So
I believe I'm
when
there.
I was reading that, I noticed that we were buying it for 3 years, right?
That is correct. It is a 3-year
Okay, but
agreement.
then it says, but Carpenter and Fredonia are only going to have it for 2 years. And those are our at-risk
Mhm.
campuses. So why are we just doing 2 years for those and 3 years everywhere else?
It's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that at the moment.
Okay.
If anything, that's an oversight. We would not do that to them intentionally. So it's either that they already have access to it and they've already pre-purchased it for the 21-22 school
Yeah.
year. And then this is
Okay.
beginning the subsequent years. But I can guarantee you that would be, if that is, in fact, it's not going to start until 2022, that is an oversight.
Well, one of the things I was looking at, we're buying this per child, right?
Yes, sir, it is a per
Because
pupil.
when the Fredonia children move to another school, they're going to need that product there. So that will just move with them, but it won't be under the Fredonia name, but it would still be the same materials. The same way about Carpenter, we're going to translate from here to there, but it's going to be a different combination. Probably more students will be there. So I thought that might have something to do with it, but just kind of understand how that was 3 for these and 2 for these.
I have a text message from Dr. Corley. She may be responding to me. She said it's prorated. Yeah, so we have access to it. So this is
We're
a.
still going to
prorated-
need those products though, if we take those students and move them to another school, right?
Well, but they're going to McMichael and Mike Moses, and they're also purchasing this
Right,
as well.
but you would only have X number of copies, and say you bought 500 at the other campus, but then you transfer 100 in, that you're now 100 short. You'd have to have the ones moved from Fredonia to there, right, with the students.
We would make sure that our numbers were accurate
Right.
based on our.
So
student
it's
enrollment.
basically, but it still doesn't make sense that even if you do that, that we only have it for 2 years here and 3 years there, but pre-purchase, they already have it and they only need it for 2 years. So anyway, it'll be good to find out what that.
We'll make sure that
what's
every
going on.
kid has access to it. Absolutely. For this year and the other 2 years.
What's also critically important to know in this instance, because we just talked about solution tree, now we're talking about accelerated learning, is that we are getting inundated by thousands of, we've got the best. You want to hit the learning, you want to hit the learning loss that's going on, and we're literally getting hit by thousands and thousands of best practices, the latest and the greatest. And one thing that we're looking at is we have had a commitment with accelerated learning. We have teachers that have been committed to it. And to your point, Leah Beth, you mentioned teachers don't have enough time. So just imagine going out and finding something completely new that we've not had success with, and coming in because it's the latest and greatest. So I do appreciate our leadership in looking at what we've committed to in Nacogdoches and making sure that we do that with fidelity.
Yes.
Every product that's out there says they're the best and the greatest. So what we need to do is go with the fidelity of what the product says they're going to do and then develop it. So seeing the data is going to be very important. So you can see the commitment that Nacogdoches has done in seeing the most valuable item a teacher has is time.
Yes.
And so what we're doing is looking at how we can best do that and not get caught up with all the bells and whistles of the new car smell with new curriculum, because they're out there. I mean, there's thousands of them that are getting inundated with our teaching and learning and also with our teachers. So
Yeah, I absolutely appreciate that. I think that sticking with something for a while
agree.
is much better than going with the flavor of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And STEM Scopes has been around for quite some time. I mean, I can remember using them many years ago. And as you saw in the narrative, I mean, it was founded at Rice University.
Yes.
It's now expanded, but it is still a great product, and especially in the 5E model. It's good.
Any other discussion on this item before we move on?
No, I think, Dr. Trujillo, I took the word out of my mouth. My thought was success of any of those programs is fidelity, commitment, and not deviation from it, and pick and choose.
Yes. No other, we'll move to item C3, which is Paula Rogers. Dr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a contract that was actually approved probably this time last year. So what happened is it was an overage. And when we got ready to plan for what I call our principal blackout dates, which were held on June 9th and 10th, and we elected to have it at Pine Creek Lodge with very limited internet access. We had to go back in and retool, making sure that we had, everything that maybe was a video, we turned it into something else. And so unfortunately, that resulted in an overage of $2,100, which is about 1.16 of a day or a day and 1.3, right? So about a day and a half. And so I apologize for this, but that's what this is. And so the original contract was for $24,000. With that addition, the total came to $26,100. And of course, that hit the threshold. So that's why I'm bringing this back to you all. But again, it was only for the 21-22 school year.
and I might add, I'm becoming very familiar with dead zones. And although that's a beautiful, beautiful site,
Absolutely.
Probably not.
it's a dead zone when it comes to cell service or internet, everything else. So that's one of the things that, but it was a great training that I was able to see our principals and leadership take at that site. And I commend the folks there and the business there, the beautiful setting and for folks to kind of retreat out. So
So this is going back and paying her for services that she provided last year?
Well, June 9th and 10th.
Okay,
Once I
well,
received, once I
last
received. the
fiscal year,
Yes,
okay.
it is, absolutely, yes, ma'am.
So
And so
this is
that-
just, we're not expending another 26-1, we're
No,
just
ma'am.
really expending the 2,100.
That's
Okay.
exactly right, yes, ma'am, and I know that, I believe that will come out of this year's money.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
that's fine. Just wanted to make sure I had my head wrapped
No,
around
ma'am,
it.
just $2,100
Okay.
from local funds.
Any additional questions on this item? All right, that'll take us to item C4, the contract with Claire Coontz. Sorry, Dr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam President. So I know several of you were at the DSC last week, and so Claire is a recently retired elementary principal who came from a district who implemented Black Fontaine classroom resources. So she's very familiar with the aches and pains that they might have undergone in implementing that. And so she's working with us to not only create our curriculum documents to help our teachers from a planning perspective, but also in increasing our capacity. Last year, in the past couple of years, she's done guided reading for us, interactive read alouds, interactive reading, shared writing. So all of those components that you look at for a good, robust literacy program. We typically call it Readers and Writers Workshop. So she's been incrementally working with us. And so the past couple of weeks, she's worked with our teachers, K1 and 2, and then I believe upcoming in the next couple of weeks, she'll work with grades 3 through 5.
How does this work? Like, does a campus go, Claire, we sure would like to book you? Is that the way? Okay, great.
So typically I say, we have a contract with this, and that's
Right.
typically how I come up with it is the campuses will say, whether it's through the comprehensive needs assessment or just in a conversation of, do you know anybody that, or do you know where we can get support? And then X. And so I'll go through either my repertoire. We always reach out to Region 7. And so this is one that kind of rose to the surface, and we've been using her, for the past couple of years. So yes, ma'am. And then they'll know we have, if this is approved, they'll know we have a contract, and they can get with me and we create a calendar, and we just schedule the days at the campus's leisure.
And also, is she fairly familiar with Fontes and Pinnell that we just rate?
I believe her district, she just retired. I believe her district adopted it or approved it a couple of years ago. So again, she's really good for us to know what we're about to step into and can give us, hey, you need to think about this. Don't do this. We did this. Let's do something different. So, and so like I said, last week, she was with a group of teachers and helping them put all the pieces together so that, again, they can take that information and share it with their grade level teachers. So it's not just us hearing from them. So that was that trickle down. We want to include them in as much of the conversations as we can so that they can help share with their colleagues.
Remind me on that. It's been a little while since we've discussed this, and of course, everything was a little different last year, but the PLCs, is that a daily or weekly schedule for the teachers on the campuses?
It depends. Each teacher has a scheduled conference period.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not they actually call one of those 5 conference periods if they designate it as a PLC, it just depends. So,
Okay.
A PLC is just a fancy word for a group of people getting together.
Collaboration, yeah.
Absolutely. And that's all that it is. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily a meeting place. It doesn't need to have a specific agenda, but I feel as though and that's why I kind of just call them collaborative planning sessions with teachers, because that's what we're doing. Is we're getting together, we're really unpacking our text. So back to your original point, usually it's weekly. On some campuses it takes place during the instructional day, and on some campuses it takes place after school.
Okay. And I know maybe it's probably before you joined our staff, one of our big initiatives was to make sure that those PLCs were happening on every campus. Can we now say that with Fidelity, we've got PLCs on all of our campuses?
I don't know, when you say fidelity to me, I kind of have a checkbox of what I would like to see in a PLC according to Solution Tree's PLC definition. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Norms, roles and responsibilities, a set agenda, blah, 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 cover covering
Okay.
certain
All right,
topics.
so let me, yeah, so I see your point.
Sorry.
No, I absolutely see your point there and I appreciate it. So I would back up, that would absolutely be the goal. And understanding that we have to baby step to get there. So my question would probably be more along the lines of, is this happening on all campuses and all grade levels where we are having this time for teachers to collaborate?
We have the time
Okay,
on every campus.
but we've built in the time, but
We've
are
built
they
in the time.
implementing it? And then what do we need to do to get them there?
So all of the things we discussed today,
Okay,
and then just constant work with them. And so, for example, like today, Rio sat in on my little cabinet meeting with teaching and learning, and so we have several different documents that we're looking like what are our PLC expectations?
yes,
So it's about a 7-page document where it drops in sample agenda items, things of that nature. So I think this is even though it was in draft form last year, I've got to be honest with you, I don't know that I ever published it. This year it will be published, and the
Okay.
expectation will be noted. So it's one of those things that I kind of look at things through like a telescope. So this is like one more notch to make it a little more clear. So I want to make sure that the expectation is out there
yes,
according to what we've learned from Solution Tree and whatever we've read and our consultants. And then how are we putting it into practice? And then as you know, it's just going and seeing and visiting and just providing feedback.
Yes.
So I want you to ask me that question maybe in about 7 months from now.
absolutely.
And then I will have a clearer version.
Well, and I will, and one of the reasons I bring it up today is because it's something we haven't, it was a goal that we had as a board. And last year kind of like redid, kind of knocked everything out of the water, right? So I just want to make sure it doesn't get lost. It doesn't get lost. I appreciate the fact that you are setting that expectation and working with the vision.
It's written it, it's clear, we'll see feedback on it, but it's going to be published and we'll give it to the administrators next week during our academic retreat. So.
Thank you.
President James, I might add, one of the things that, early on, before they got their device, they were literally basically working in isolation. They were tied to a lead, and they go back to their classroom. Time again, time again, you're talking about it. Go back and try to put it right to that, to see what last year and see what we're doing. Things that we could have ever done. We've put this technology in the hands of every one of our teachers. They're learning management. They're working on campus. So I will tell you, one of the greatest things that we've done is just accelerate devices to every teacher.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Are we good to go?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir, for letting us know. Sorry for that pause. Dr. Trujillo, you had the floor?
Well, I just saying that one of the greatest things that we have when we're talking about the fidelity of PLCs, and Dr. Broman understands this from the medical side, but one of the best things you can do as a medical physician is your doctor's rounds. The rounds coming together and learning about what's going on. And this is a great tool that our teachers can use. And it goes way back even to the standardization of the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. The minute the state said we have one curriculum, if you were teaching in isolation, there's a problem because you could take one of those TEKs and go 100 different ways. If you're not teaching to the depth and the complexity and to the verb, they keep
Mhm.
talking about all the things that are there. So now when you come together, you can create one common term, one common language, one common set of resources. But one of the things that we lacked until most recently was this device right here.
Yeah.
And it had added to the frustrations of a teacher, because they would sit down and do everything on pencil and paper and then go back to their rooms and sit on a computer and be able to try to bring it to life. But now I will tell you firsthand, going out there and sitting in a few PLCs this last year, even though it was a strange year, it was pretty awesome to sit there and watch the teachers show up and have their devices in front of them. And then they're engaging in such deeper dialogue about the curriculum, and then it's impacting right into the instruction,
Yes.
which is in their devices. So I commend the board for the actions that we did last year in prioritizing our teachers with their devices. So when we ask about PLCs, we say thank you, because our
Absolutely.
PLCs have gotten better because of the tools that we continue to put in front of our teachers.
Wonderful.
And Dr. Thrio, if I could just add to that, it's great sitting in a room with teachers because they have their devices, but then they're also projecting it up on the flat panel. And so more often than not, they're planning using a Google Sheet or a Google document. So not only do they have it in front of them, but they can also see, and everybody's participatory. So they're engaging in the meaningful conversations to understand the common vocabulary. Oh, how are we going to teach this? It's really a sight to see.
Wonderful.
So thank you not only for the devices, but also for the flat panels.
Fantastic.
And Pam, let me just remind you, because I know you know this, you just weren't thinking of it. We can't be dogmatic about how many meetings have to occur,
Agreed. Yes.
especially at the high school where you have one teacher teaching one class of one curriculum. And then,
Mhm.
it would be a waste of their time to have more than just that one very broad in science, biology, kind of area. Anyway,
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a very, very valid point.
I'll be
But,
legalistic.
and yes, yes. Well, and to get to the point where it's happening on, that at least PLCs are functioning in some form
Yes,
on every campus at every grade level
Absolutely.
will be a milestone when we hit that achievement.
and they are now. Yes,
Okay.
we're just going to make a few little tweaks.
There you
Yes,
go.
ma'am.
That will take us to item C5, frontline education. Dr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam President. So this is a program that we've been using. It's more of a space, if you will, online space. It's also called Success Ed, but it's where we house all of our individual education plans for students who are served in special education as well as 504. So this is just an annual renewal, and it's coming out of, I believe, local funds, and it's $26,792.46. Actually, it's split funded between federal, which is the IDEA money, which is special ed, as well as local.
Any questions on this item? That will take us to item D, consideration of resolution regarding ESSER 3 and policy CB, local, state, and federal revenue sources. Mr. Martin.
Good afternoon, President Fitch, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo. Thank you for allowing us an opportunity to present this afternoon. The Texas Education Agency guidance on the elementary and secondary school emergency relief 3 ESSER fund application process references required public notice for all federal grant applications before the district submits the application to TEA. What we're asking the board to do is review and approve on page 149 a resolution authorizing the superintendent to take actions on approving the grant and award plans as necessary. I'll be happy to entertain any questions the board may have.
Any questions on this item?
Not a question, but sooner the better.
I concur.
So this looks a little different to me, Mr. Martin. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Because usually when we do a policy change, the format of what we're seeing is a little different. We're doing this through a resolution, but the effect is the same.
The effect is the same, yes, ma'am. You're doing it through a resolution because of the short notice that we were given by the federal government, as well as TEA. TASB put together this actual resolution that is word for word the recommendation to the board. And rather than you going to 2 readings to get a policy passed, you're just doing it through a resolution.
Okay. Did you have something else, Mr.
No.
Goodwin? Okay, all right. All right. So we'll go to item E, hazardous bus routes for the 2021-2022 school year. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam President. According to district policy, CNA legal, the district may apply with the Commissioner of Education for an additional amount of up to 10% of its regular transportation allotment to be used for transportation of students living within 2 miles of the school they attend, who would be subject to hazardous traffic conditions if they walk to school. This is an annual approval that the board has before them. If I can bring your attention to page 152, we have listed out another resolution here, which includes those hazardous bus routes. And what constitutes a hazardous bus route is conditions that exist where there are no walkways in the event that students had to walk within that 2-mile radius. There are no walkways or students have to cross a freeway, expressway, an underpass, an overpass, or a bridge, or a major traffic artery, or an industrial or commercial area. What we have listed here on the resolution are those areas that we feel constitutes hazardous bus routes for our students.
I'm almost surprised we don't have more on the list because I know we don't have very many sidewalks in our community.
We do not, but keep in mind, this is within the 2-mile radius
2 mile,
of
okay.
the actual
the
school
campus.
that they're supposed to attend. If you'll recall, we actually added one last year.
Yes, I do remember that.
So we have gone back and reviewed this list again this year.
Appreciate that. Now I think we might add some more.
Yes, sir.
I was thinking about carpenters moving, and when carpenter moves, there's going to be a lot of problems on getting people across those busy roads, the Loop and Main Street. So we have apartments right across the street, and we need to be doing some planning about that. But when you run down Main Street and go out 21, all those places qualify, and we can go the Loop both directions. So we have at least 4 more places we can put on there.
Thank you, Dr. Bowman. You're exactly correct. When we do make those changes, and just a word, we met with our demographers last week and talked about some of these issues that we may run into as we move our campuses and move our students from one campus to the other. As well, Mr. Lampkin and I have talked about adding additional hazardous routes as we go through this process of rezoning or redrawing our boundary lines for schools.
So in other words, we will be able to come back and update this once the new campus opens.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And what are we doing about crossings at coming across Main Street into Carpenter? And are kids going to walk down the road going to school? There's no sidewalks. How's that going to be handled?
That should be a hazardous, once we open the Emily and Carpenter, that is something we're going to have to come back and revisit and look at how many students. Again, if they're within that 2-mile bus, 2 miles within the school that they live within, then the bus will pick them up and we will have to add that route to the list.
In other words, we're going to probably have students that currently are not within 2 miles and they can walk to the current Carpenter.
Mhm.
However, when we reevaluate this, students that have never ridden a bus to Carpenter will have to be provided transportation to Carpenter once that occurs. And it's going to also down the road, that same fact for Fredonia. And the same thing will happen for McMichael with students that are transferring from Mike Moses as well. So it's just going to be Pandora's box of going in there and evaluating each one of those entities as they come online, and we get a much more of a time frame as to when that's going to happen, and we'll do that well in advance. So
This can increase our money to transport those students because it gives us bonus money, right?
Yes, sir.
yeah, it's
So
I think time will dictate.
Any additional conversation on this item? Okay. We'll move to item F, annual review of local policy CDA, other revenues, investments. Mrs. Barber.
Thank you. This is our annual review of our investment policy. I am presenting no change to our current policy. So I'd just like to entertain any questions you might have.
Hearing none, we'll move to item G, elementary reading standards. Dr. Hill.
Thank you, President Fitch. The last time we reviewed this was during the 2018-19 school year when I came on board. It is referenced in our EIE, local policy for promotion and retention. We have been using the developmental reading assessment, level 2, DRA2 is what it was called. This year with us moving to Fontes and Pinnell, it's now the benchmark assessment system. And so attached, you will see the levels that we are proposing. And this aligns with the product. This is also listed at the end of our elementary grading guidelines, and it is reported on, I know the early elementary grade level report cards.
Any questions or comments on this item? Right. Hearing none, we will move to item H, consideration of endorsement of candidate for the TASB Board of Directors. Dr. Trujillo.
President Finch and Board, what we have here are two attached items that you'll be able to look at, as well as other items there talking about the individuals. One is the 2021 nomination informations and biographies of the individuals. And then the second is the actual endorsement form, where the board would submit one document that the board collectively would select as or endorse as the representative. The attached are TSB nominations for Region 7. These two individuals have been nominated by their local boards for TASB board positions, which are vacant or they've expired. Between Saturday, July 3rd and Monday, August 30th, Region 7 districts are invited to endorse a candidate from Region 7. If a majority of the active members of the region endorses one candidate, that individual will be elected to the TASB board. If at least 25%, but not more than the majority endorses the candidate, that individual will be included on the official ballot at the TASB delegate assembly. So what we have is for your record to review. One is Ben Donald and the other one individual is Tony Raymond.
Board, I did ask Dr. Groman, since he has been involved at TASB for us on many areas, if he had any comments or knew either one of these individuals or had a recommendation or any thoughts he'd like to share with us.
yes. Everybody who got this last time, if you turn it over, that's who I talked to. This is Helen Work from Marshall. She's in her 16th year and she's on Leadership TASB Executive Committee. By the way, she told me, I asked her about, do they do review meetings? And she said, yes, we do, but we do it because we paid a lot of money to join with big districts. And the end result of that meeting and that money, we started reviews. And she says, and you did it for free. And I said, yeah, we did it because we have a very smart board president. So I think that's a good way to start this conversation. I talked to Ms. Warwick, and she personally knows Dr. Ben Donald. He's a chiropractor in Carthage. And if you look, he's been there a long time. What he's done on the board is a long time. He does other things. You can look at all the different people, all the backgrounds. I would ask you to look at stability and employment. You remember I applied for the temporary position back sometime in March or something. And so I would just say, if you're going to look at this, I think you should look at stability. But what she said, that she personally knows him, and that basically that Marshall was going to endorse him because of the district that he's from represents better Marshall district, and it's a larger size, the students, the problems that they face, that the words she said, similar makeup and problems. That's what she said, similar makeup and problems. So we can discuss this. I don't personally know either of these people. I did talk to Dr. Nation in Tyler, who was in my leadership TASB class 2020. And she said personally, she supports Dr. Dr. Donald. And the board, they were going to be looking at doing this same thing. So you can do further evaluation. Just because people say that's who they're going to endorse, we can discuss it further, or I can try to answer any questions that you have. But I'm appreciative that I got to talk to these people, and I always learn if I'm learning about one thing, I learn about something else. And so that's wonderful to make these interactions. And I think this is very good that we're going into it to try to pick an endorsement now instead of doing it at the meeting. I think it's much better. Basically, if they get a high enough number, then there's no election for them. They're selected. And so we just basically, this is the election before the election. So that's the way I interpret it. Anybody have any questions for me?
I think we have enough time to look at it and make a decision at a later date.
Yes, this will actually be on our agenda for Thursday night. So
When is it due final? I guess it's
let's see.
August 30th.
Dr. Trujillo.
August 30th, TASB must receive it on or before August 30th.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll have Holly just fax it to. So if we get it.
All right. That will take us to agenda review of our discussion action agenda, item 4A, consideration of renaming Malcolm Rector Technical High School. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam President. If I may direct the board's attention to page 170 in your board book. There's an action sheet there that explains that on July the 12th, 2021, the Nacogdoches Facilities Naming Committee met via Zoom. During that Zoom meeting, members vote to formally name the current Malcolm Rector Technical High School located at 6003 North Street to the Margie Chumley Academy for Success. In accordance with board policy CW local, members of the committee included the superintendent's designee, which was myself, a board member, which Dr. Groman attended, a representative of facilities. We had Ralph LaRue and Cindy Robertson, representative of the business office, which was the CFO, Mrs. Lisa Barbary, the district police department representative, which was Chief Sandra Murray, and a community representative, which was Ed Poole. I've included the memo to Dr. Trujillo, which was located in your board book. Madam President, if I may, I will just highlight just a few items of Ms. Chumley's career as an educator. Ms. Chumley has served as an educator for 57 years mostly in the Nacogdoches community. She worked 1 year down at Cleveland ISD, and she was the first African-American teacher in Cleveland ISD. She started with Nacogdoches ISD in 1963, and she was a teacher at Head Start for 17 years. She's been subbing with Nacogdoches ISD for about 32 years, and subsequently she has also signed up for next year for her 58th year as an educator to our students. She is in March 5th of 2020, there was an article done by Nathan in the Daily Sentinel, which highlighted Mrs. Chumley and her accomplishments. And I will just quote Mrs. Chumley here, if I may. She was asked if she would share some advice to any incoming teachers. And I quote, she says, stick to your word, love what you do, and love the students with fairness, firmness, and friendliness. Administration recommends that the board rename the Malcolm Rector Center at 6000 North Street to the Chumley Academy for Success. I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Ms. Martin, with all my respect to Ms. Chumley,
Yes, sir.
I just wondered if there was any other person was nominated as well.
There were other nominees during the meeting. I failed to mention Benjamin Newsom was the teacher who represented the current Malcolm Rector Center. Mr. Newsom was recommended Ms. Chumley. We started our recommendations in the meeting, and he recommended Mrs. Chumley. His second on the list was Mr. Jimmy Parton. There was a nomination for Domingo Ramon and a nomination for Nacogdoches Academy for Success.
So there's two.
You left out one,
I've got one.
Camino Real.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Camino Real was another nomination.
I may ask, when I received the board book last week and reviewed this, I'm not familiar with Ms. Chumley. There was not any biographical information provided in board book. So my question comes to me, if we're naming a building, then to me that would indicate that that individual has made a substantial contribution to the education of students in our community. What would you say Ms. Chumley's substantial contribution that kind of changed the face of Nacogdoches ISD would be?
Her commitment to the district, her love for kids. Ms. Chumley has taught generations of students, has come in and made an impact on those students as well. She's well respected in the community. She's well respected by current students, by her fellow peers within the school district teachers. In fact, Mr. Newsom, when he was explaining his reason for this nomination, which was asked, he said that the staff at he polled the staff at Malcolm Rector Technical Training Center before he left. By the way, we thank Mr. Newsom because he was on his trip for his vacation. I think it was in Pueblo, Colorado at the time, and he stopped and zoomed in with us on his phone. But he said that he had polled the staff, and that the staff at the Malcolm Rector was the one who made this nomination and was the ones who subsequently had the most votes for Mrs. Chumley. Her contributions span 5 decades, basically, and generations of students would be her significant.
Did I hear you say she taught 1 year in the district, 17 outside the district at Head Start, and then came back as a substitute teacher?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, let me look back at her. We have her as teaching 4 years actually in the district when she first began at Briggs Quinn Junior High, 1963.
Right. So she spent 4 years in the district, and then went to Head Start for 17 years, then returned as a substitute teacher to the district. And she currently substitutes at the Malcolm Rector School, or?
Mostly at the middle schools, either middle schools, the high school, and the alternative school, Malcolm Rector. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Excuse me.
Okay. And the rationale is that because of 5 decades of service, that is, and that she is, I don't want to, I'm not saying that she doesn't, but I know we've got a lot of very passionate teachers in our district. But the rationale, I think what I'm hearing you say, is because of 5 decades of service to education, not necessarily Nacogdoches ISD, but to education in Nacogdoches, is what the committee felt like raised her to the level of naming this building.
Yes, ma'am. You're correct. Five decades of education to the students and community of Nacogdoches in general was the unanimous, was the choice of the committee.
Was there discussion in the committee about what the criteria should be, or what that, does that make sense? What level does somebody move from just a beloved educator status to, wow, you have made such an impact on our education in Nacogdoches that we need to name a building?
What we did was we referred back to the board's policy, CW local, which talks about the such honors shall be limited to honoring persons who have a long history and a record of distinguished and recognized service to the district, especially service at significant contributions to education of children in the district. However, the name of the facility may also recognize a state or a national figure, local, residential, or geographical area, or a state or national park. We referred back to the board's policy and looking at coming to some type of conclusion for recommending a name to the superintendent.
And kind of coming back to board policy, I think what I'm having challenging wrapping my head around is really she did 4 years of service in the district, and then 17 outside the district, and then substitute teaching.
Sure.
Versus, we've had beloved teachers who've served 40 years within the district. Thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, when I read Mr. Wicker's story here, and Ms. Chumley has taught children who are now aunts, who are parents, who are now parents, who are aunts, uncles, grandparents. And to this day, she still has the respect of the students and her peer teachers when she steps on the campus. She is the most requested substitute that we have. She's the most reliable substitute that we have. When we call her, she's coming. If she does not have some other commitment at another campus within the Nacogdoches Independent School District, she is coming to that assignment.
Mr. Martin,
Yes, sir.
I personally know Ms. Chamberlain, and through the high school substituting in the workrooms a lot of times, and I have a world of respect for her. However, did we, maybe we did, if we did, I'm ignorant about it. Did we solicit names from public, from people, okay. During my years of coaching, teaching, I had 2 great mentors that I'm always looking at them as a mother, Arkla Stein and Johnny Simpson. And if there was an open solicitation of names, I probably would be nominating one. And those 2 ladies also taught, supervised, made ladies and men, other children, 30 or 40 years of their services, not substituting, working with those kids day in, day out, disciplining them, correcting them, giving them lessons, and so on. I'm a little bit disappointed because there was not a solicitation for the names, so people present more people. and evaluate more people.
That's a very good point, Mr. Nermont.
And Coach, I totally respect that, and I'm not here to convince the board or anyone else of the accomplishments that Ms. Chumley has made. My role was simply to facilitate a committee and solicit from that committee nominations for naming of the school. I agree, there are several out there, and I offered no names for the school. I just opened the floor for nominations as the facilitator to offer this committee an opportunity
Yeah,
to.
I think that would be a good idea to solicit those names from those people who have been in the district as well. You know, we have, Mr. Portman is a great choice. Virginia Summers is a great choice. Gosh,
Based on that criteria, you can come up with names.
Yes.
Mr. Haygood was a choice, Jim Haygood, father of the band in NISD for many years. And his protege became, excuse me, directors and directors.
It's a good point. And not to embarrass you, but I even think of you, Mr. Nermont, and the impact that you've had on generations and generations of students. And I've had the privilege of visiting with many alumni as well. So not that I'm suggesting that, I'm saying I agree that there's a lot. Would one option be to send this back to committee and say, we would like to see more community input on this and solicit some names and do a little deeper dive?
We can absolutely do that. It's, what we're doing is just.
Could I say something?
Work from the committee, so, yes, sir.
If you don't mind. I was looking at the agenda item. And I see that this was the work of a committee, not an individual. The recommendation that's before us came from the campus that we are naming. So I think we need to respect that. That's the first thing. The second thing is our duty here today is not to recommend a process or procedure to selecting a name, but to approve or disapprove the recommendation from the administration. And then the third thing I want to point out is that there's no doubt in my mind that if we took a poll, everybody could come up with a name that school should be named after. And I think it's disrespectful to the campus and to the committee for us to supersede their labor, their work. Our own colleague, Dr. Groman, was on the committee. This is what you guys is presenting to us after much time and consideration. And I just think it's somewhat disrespectful not to respect their time and effort in bringing forth this recommendation. Again, 50 years is a long time to work anywhere. Is that the total 50? How many years? 57. 57 years. And yet to this day, this lady is still with the district. 57 years. I don't think we ought to take that lightly. 57 years of giving her life to children. That's a long time. So I think we need to be more considerate of the work that has gone before us. Yes, I'm pretty sure you all have heroes that you would love to see a building named after. But again, our job today is not to determine a process, not to solicit names, but to look at the work that's been done before us. And of course, we have the right to accept or reject the recommendation, but this is the administrative recommendation. And I think we ought to respect it. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Reverend. I appreciate those words, but I would also point out that we only had one community representative on that committee, and then everybody else was representing the school district. And I think when we're talking about something as substantial as naming a building, that that name will be around for hopefully hundreds of years, that seeking broad-based community input is our responsibility as a board. But that, again, that's just my perspective.
Understand, but I mean, I think the same process was used when we named Mike Moses.
I
They didn't-
can't speak to that, yeah.
I think I
can't
can.
speak to that.
Reverend, I hear you very clearly, and sometimes you can say water's under the bridge. However, Dr. Groman's been in this system a very short period of time within this town, and now his knowledge of who is who. Mr. LaRue, the same, have not been here to see exactly. As I look at Lisa, the same way, doesn't know exactly who was in this district, who has done what. I feel like I said, so maybe it's water under the bridge. However, it's a very, very wrong direction to go.
Did I not hear you that the campus, this was the campus recommendation?
According to, yes, sir, according to Mr. Newsom, he told the committee that the campus.
Well, if Mr. Newsom's talked behalf of campus, it's not valid. He should have signature or some letters of recommendation from the campuses. We can go around it over and over and over because I know how the documentation is supposed to be done. In a court of law, it says so-and-so said, it doesn't count until you have a valid certified letter from that person.
I would love to hear from Dr. Groman since he was a member of the committee. I mean, how do you feel about the discussion that's taking place?
I'm going to stop saying, by the way, it's no disrespect to Ms. Jumlin because I love that lady.
The meeting was a little confusing. I never got all that information on Ms. Chumley. I made some recommendations that were what I perceived as neutral recommendations that we didn't get in this monstrosity of this person got it or that. It's like crowning a beauty king or queen. So I think that one of the things we talked about is, well, we didn't want to have a living person. And Mr. Parton came up, and that was just dropped. And so it didn't go very smoothly. And there was not unanimous. It was not unanimous. But the backup plan was we'll put a neutral name, Nacogdoches Academy for Success. What, is that right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Nacogdoches Academy for Success. As a neutral, we stay out of this fracasso of a person. And so we can really hurt a lot of feelings, and I don't want to hurt any feelings, but I'm in agreement. When we name something, we have a responsibility that it's not just what we want, but what the community wants. And there was only one community member on this meeting, on this committee. So, and he recommended Mr. Parton. So I don't think this is as clear cut as possible. I think it's good that we delve into it a little further and consider not just the fact that it came from a committee, because basically, if you read the policy, the board can just name it without, regardless of what this committee says, we can name it. But I think we as a committee, as a board, we can determine the way that we choose to do this. And that doesn't mean it will change what's happening right now. But we had actually two names presented from the committee, equal. Okay, is that right, Mr. Martin? Both those names were committed to equal names.
They were, those two names as well as Domingo.
Those were the top names. They were equal.
They, no, actually, it was Ms. Chumley had 4 votes and Nacogdoches Academy for Success had 4.
How many?
So both
there
had
was equal.
4.
Yeah.
So we had two
There was-
names that each had 4 votes. But you're bringing us,
Only one.
so is that to say then administration is then choosing, if the committee had a tie vote, administration is suggesting that they prefer this name?
My understanding is based on the definition they were using, it somehow it arrived at the fact that it couldn't be named after an individual. That it, and I don't know where that decision was made, because it's, we can go with an individual, we can go with a non-individual. So I believe the second name came up based on the conversation from the committee that said that just in case they can't be named after an individual, what's the name that we're going with? Let me, can I bring something here to it? The work of the committee, and I do appreciate what Reverend is saying, and I hear what Coach is saying. The work that we've done, the committee came together, and they voted, and they got a group. What we've got is a presentation from the work from the committee. Now, the board can collectively sit there and say, you know what, we need to do better than that one. So we're not going to move the vote forward. And then that causes us to go back and really evaluate, make sure we got the steps that are there. What I caution us with is the fact that if we have the work of the committee and they're working through that, and we go back and change it, let's go through the process. I want to make sure I fully understand what the will of the board is. Is this somebody that we're good with, or we need to go back and reevaluate this individual as well? Not saying this person does not meet the criteria, but also look at what can we do to make the work of the committee much more meaningful and much deeper. But stopping the work at this point to say, you know what, can we go back to the committee and have that? What we're doing is we're presenting a proposed let the work from the committee come to the board, and then let the board collectively tell us, you know what, no, let's go, we're not going to move forward with this. Aunts, brothers, sisters is also important. What also really, really touched my spirit was you didn't have to have a title. Nacogdoches is saying that this individual has invested their lives. And when I walked in at a high school last year, and we're wearing masks and we're going through this, one of the individuals that should not be in that high school should not be in that high school by the simple fact of the age that she has, was there every time. And I remember asking an individual saying, you know, is this, and my heart goes out because I'm thinking this person was not gonna be scared to come up and work with our kids. And for the kids to know this individual, and the teachers to know this individual, and the administrators to know this individual, and it's not a title or initials at the end of the last name. It touched my spirit to say we have a person here that has invested their career to educating the kids, and probably one of the toughest times in our whole history when people, I couldn't find a retired person to take care of the high school. Remember, we did that last year. All the retirees kind of went off. This individual's been retired and will show up this year and will do the job this year. And I don't want to say her age, but I could promise you, some of us in here can double over our age and still be younger than this individual, but she's committed to these kids. I am not saying this is the person. All I am saying is this was the process. And if the board sees that this is the direction that we're going to go, then we go that way. If it's not, then let it be voted on. And then we go back to the committee and we follow the processes. Okay, let's see how we can sharpen the direction. I was just pleasantly surprised by seeing an individual that I personally, I don't know her. Coach is absolutely correct. There's a lot of us in the circle that really haven't been involved. But I know last year walking those hallways and seeing an individual that was showing up every single time. And I promise you, the teachers were not just calling her right off the bat. They were probably worried for her as well. But she answered the call and will continue to answer the call for what we have. So I say, watch the process we have. We've selected it. It was a process that was designed. And if there's something that we need to go back and refine based on the actions of the board, then we will go back and refine that. And there's not a sense of urgency. Right now, we just want to get love her to death, but Malcolm Rector's name's got to come off that building. It's confusing the community because we have two Malcolm Rectors. And so what we could do is just take care of that and then move forward as the need arises. So I am not speaking in favor or against. All I'm saying is that's the process. We presented it to you all on Thursday. The board looks at it and says, okay, you know what? We need to go deeper. There are some well-deserved individuals that are out there. And if that's the case, then we can do recommendations of those folks. But I will tell you, just in the short information I have and actually seeing her there and knowing the lives that she's touched in all these years, it's not only her, but it's all of our teachers that showed up every day last year and they worked, and our administrators, all of the folks that came in there. But this is one individual that I was surprised to see a substitute, somebody with no initials, no titles, just somebody who's retired that's come in and done the job. But I will tell you this, now, and this note, a teacher knows who to call. A teacher knows who's going to maintain order in a classroom and maintain the momentum of the instruction that's going to go on. And for her to continue to be on that short list, that's powerful because teachers know that and kids know that. So they know her by name, and I'm talking multiple generations. I'm talking uncles, aunts, some of our parents that are out there. So she's been involved in that aspect of it. So that I just wanted to make sure to share that portion of it. President Fitch, thank you.
Thank you.
I have one more thing. Mr. Martin, there was a comment in the meetings to combine the names. It would be Chumley, Parton. That was one of the recommendations or considerations. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
But we never voted on that?
No, sir.
I have a question to clear my mind. Mr. Newsom, you said somebody called from Colorado?
Yes, sir. Mr. Newsom.
He called from,
Yeah,
how did he know that this place is going to be renamed?
He teaches that, he's a teacher at the current Malcolm Rector.
Now,
Yes, sir.
I thought you said you called from Colorado.
No, he called. He zoomed in from Colorado to be part of the meeting.
Was he on vacation?
Yeah, he was on vacation.
Okay.
He's on vacation, yeah, in Colorado. He zoomed in.
So that combination of names was not considered and it was not voted on. It was stated, but it was lost. Okay.
Understood. Thoughts? Any additional thoughts?
Could we hear from Ms. Barbarick, since she was on the committee?
Yeah, get on the hot seat. Ralph is over there too.
I was counting up the number on the committee and I believe it was 5. Is that correct? Not counting you.
Not counting me.
My understanding was Chumley was the top choice, but there was a perception that a name of a person might not be accepted. And so then we voted on a second generic name being Nacogdoches. So the 4 votes were 4 members of the 5. And then the second vote was the 4 members, same 4 members. So it's not like there was a tie.
Well, I count 8 members on the committee.
There's 6. I am not a voting member. I'm
Okay.
facilitating.
So,
Okay.
so,
six. Okay.
right. So
Thank
when
you
we,
for that
so
clarification.
when it was stated that there was 4 and 4, it was the same 4
Okay.
Right.
and one member did not vote. And as far as several names were thrown out. When recommendations were made, I moved that this name be accepted. Only 2 names were moved forward of the several that were put forward. So it's not that, I didn't take it that the one was lost. Because if you say that's lost, then so were all the other names that weren't voted on.
Mhm.
But those were basically Chumley, in my opinion, was the top choice. We voted on that first, 4 votes. Then just in case that an actual person's name wasn't accepted, we did the second vote and all 4 were voted again.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. Any other conversation today before we move on?
Mr. LaRue,
Nope.
Good afternoon, Mr. LaRue.
Good afternoon, President Fitch, board members and superintendent. Because of this lengthy discussion, I was part of the side that recommended no name, the generic name. There are hundreds of people here in this community, some serve on this board, that we could start naming stuff after. It's very difficult to pick one above others. And it depends on your exposure to them, your perspective, your view shed. The teachers in the school systems clearly have a view. Those of us in the communities that pay taxes and want to see things move forward have a different view of who's doing what to improve the district overall long-term. So I've been in your shoes before, so it's a tough decision. Any questions I can answer?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments.
And Madam President, if I may bring up one area of
Absolutely.
clarification. We did have actually 2 committee members who were community members at our last naming committee, but it was brought to my attention that the board's policy says a community representative. So we respectfully ask one community member to step down for this particular.
and the one that served was Mr. Ed Poole.
The one that did serve was, yes, Mr. Edward. That's correct.
Any further discussion, comments, questions?
Yeah, I'm still dwelling on that. Cynthia Robertson, is she a Nacogdoches citizen, local, or just implanted?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
She's here today. Would we like to ask her to speak?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Look at her, she's rolling her eyes.
You weren't trying to hide.
Thank you, Madam President, the Board of Directors, and Dr. Trujillo. Actually, I was not a voting member because Ralph and I are really one.
Okay,
So that's what
okay,
we both represent plant services.
very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so out of that takes us down to 5 voting members then, okay. All right. Did you have any other comments, Mr. Neermont?
Oh,
All right, hearing no more discussion, last call before we move on. All right, we will move to the next item. Flip the page over. Which is first reading of TASB Policy Update 117. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, President Fitch. If I may direct the board's attention to page 174 of your board book. There you will find update 117. TASB policy review. A lot of these updates deal with legal policies, which you're familiar that is legislature or comes from the commissioner that you do not vote on. The board charge is to vote on 3 policies in this particular update. If you've read the text, you're familiar that deletions are found red, strike through, and the new additions are found with a blue text. If you take a look at CH local policy, CH local, there's quite a bit of blue text in there. There was text added. This policy refers to the purchasing and acquisition portion. One thing I want to note in this policy as well is that the superintendent or designee is struck through. You will see that in a number of policies that are upcoming, which simply means that the superintendent has to do all of these duties now, him or herself. No, just kidding. There is another policy, BJA, that speaks to the superintendent's responsibilities and his or her ability to designate. So TASB is going through and cleaning up policies, your board policies with that designee taken out. The next policy is CV. Both of these are interrelated. Both of these are talking to emergency situations like we experienced this past winter with the winter storms. It gives the superintendent authority to go ahead and make emergency purchases or repairs when it's dealing with health or safety issues at the school. However, he or she is required to come back to the board and make a report on those decisions that are made during those times. It just expedites the process and make sure that our employees and our students are in a healthy and safe environment. Moving on, there's policy DEC local. DEC local is the board's policy regarding leaves and absences. It has been revised quite a bit. In speaking with TASB, we had the pleasure of talking to our policy consultant, Kathy London. She is here. She came down last week and visited with Holly, Dr. Trujillo, and I. She is doing an audit over in San Augustine ISD, and we talked a little bit about these updates that are upcoming. What they're trying to do here in DEC, or what they're recommending doing, is that the board remove a lot of the administrative regulation type of clauses that are in our policy here and move those to administrative regulations and the employee handbook. Mr. Whitaker and I have reviewed the new model employee handbook that's been released by TASB, and we see that a lot of these sentences and rules and regulations that we now have in policy have been moved over to administrative regulations. I'll be happy to entertain any questions the board may have about update 117. But before so, I will also mention that Ms. London told us that update 118 is going to be a very large update to look forward to. I will answer any questions you all may.
This won't require an action on behalf of the board.
Yes, sir. This one, yes, sir. This is first reading.
Okay.
This is first reading.
Hearing no questions, correct?
I have a question about our policy for dealing with medications for asthmatics. That's changing, but I don't know what our present policy is.
Mr. Martin.
That one, I cannot off the top of my head tell you which policy it is, but we can definitely find out.
Based on my experience, they would give it to the nurse's office, and if they need it, they'll go to the nurse's office. And if they were on a road trip, the sponsor would carry that in the box. That's my experience.
Yes, sir.
I think that possibly is changing or the board can adopt a policy where we have an inhaler and it's not theirs, it's ours, but I don't know what, I was looking for the spot. I was thinking it was around 160 something. Because I went through all this.
Mhm.
I didn't go through it in detail, but I went through it, scanning it, and I'm going, that's something that's really important. And medical legal,
Mhm.
if we don't follow that policy to the letter, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
So
I think
that was important to me.
I think that was a question I had a couple of times earlier about what is our policy on that?
Yes, sir.
Specifically, I asked that.
I remember that.
Hopefully it'll come out in update 118. But you are correct, Coach. Current practice is that the nurse holds the inhaler, and it depends on the age of the child as well. I believe is what I recall. If they are an older child, then they can administer their own. However, if they are an elementary age student or below, then it must remain in the nurses.
They always can keep it in their pockets. Nobody knows.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Would there be any objection to moving this item to consent agenda?
I don't have any.
Okay, we'll do that then. Thank you. Our next item is consideration of resolution to establish an education foundation. Mr. Linebarger.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, President Fitch, board members, Superintendent Trujillo. In front of you is a resolution calling for a creation of a education foundation to benefit Nacogdoches ISD. We started, and I should say we, at the direction of Alton Fraley, Aaron Wyndham began a couple of years ago exploring what we would have to do to establish an education foundation. And then the pandemic set in and everything got put on hold. So we were really thinking we had really elongated this process until we were meeting with a group that we are considering working with to create this foundation. And they actually, in their files, showed that we had begun talking with them back in 2008. So this is something for some time the school district has been considering. It is something that a number of school districts across Texas and across the nation have pursued. And we are ready to take that step. And Dr. Trujillo brought this up a few months ago. He called me and said, I've got someone who wants to donate money to our education foundation. Who do I need to speak with? I said, well, Dr. Trujillo, we don't have one right now. And he made it clear that we need to proceed and move forward on this. And that's what we are doing here with this initial step of bringing a resolution to the board.
President Finch, I might add, what's critically important for the board to know with this is I have no firsthand knowledge of this group. I never had a conversation with Mr. Fraley about this group. In 2008, the board looked a lot different at that point. They started looking at, this was the group. So for a group to keep coming up under different administration as to being a group to really consider, and it goes back to 2008, 2009, and it comes back when Mr. Fraley's here, and it comes back again as we're having the conversation. This is a pretty dynamic opportunity for us to look at an entity that has come up repeatedly to help navigate the waters as we're moving in this direction. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that. This is not anybody that I know firsthand or even have had any dealings with, but by reputation and being able to sit with his department and also find out that was surprised. President Finch, you and I had talked about this, that this has been going on for a while. They've been talking about it. So I just want to make sure we can start celebrating the opportunities that our teachers are going to be able to have. I had a specific conversation with Les this morning, and Lufkin is celebrating their, how many year?
I believe they just celebrated their 8th anniversary.
8th anniversary of their education foundation.
Mhm.
So I don't want it to be 9. I want us to go in and hit the ground running. So
I'm one of those who give a scholarship. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, those who were interested would give it to Alumni Association, and Alumni Association create, or they individually would come on assembly night and present that. Would this program interfere with the Alumni Association's scholarship? Because we give almost $1 million.
Yeah, that's a lot.
yeah, I see it, anything is going to interact with each other. However, my experience in dealing with education association is dealing with a lot of it's going back to the teachers and improving instruction in the classroom,
Okay.
where teachers can write a grant and it's competitive, and then they can improve things there and not have to go to the set budget that's there. Will it have implications with regards to that? It may. I know the individual that called and wanted to donate the funds, asked specifically for the Education Foundation. And then the other thing that allows us to do when you have an Education Foundation is a stronger, cohesive relationship with the community. You have partnerships like the golf, you can have a golf tournament, or you can have something in partnership with Rotary, or something in partnership with trying to think of some of our other groups that we have that are in town that are looking to be part of something bigger than themselves. Early on, Lisa and I went to the Bright Foundation, and they had a donation that came to the district. So this allows a direction that we can actually impact the classroom. What you're speaking to, Coach, is to our students. Of course, you have an entity that's going to donate money. They're going to have to make a decision as to which direction it's going to go. But I will tell you, when you hear down the street in Lufkin, they've got $300,000, I believe, to date, right?
Roughly.
About $300,000 that has impacted the classrooms. That's powerful for our teachers, so that they can write competitive grants for a clicker in their classroom, or a new widget that they're looking for in their classroom that knows that it can't be part of the budget, but they have an opportunity to write for a grant.
I'm for it.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, that will take us to our executive session to discuss the items posted on our agenda pursuant to the following provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act and as allowed by Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.074, and 551.129. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussions in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open session. It is now 1:47 p.m. We will not reconvene into open session before
2:45.
2:45. All right. Thank you.
That's the disadvantage of not having it screen.
Mindy,
Yes.
go ahead, do what I told you.
I just closed it.
All right. So we're now reconvening into open session at 3 p.m. Are there any future agenda items the board would wish to add? All right. I'll open the floor for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mrs. Winslow. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Reverend Irvin. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. See you guys Thursday evening.